Welcome to this special episode of Greats with Garby as we go global to bring you our biggest guest to date. It's an episode brought to you by ISC Sport, the choice for high performance kit, and we have some of their goods to give away to the best listener question. There are some rippers that have come in. I can't wait to pose them to our guest, as well as our special sponsor for this episode, that is Timbermate. Now, while you've been in isolation and doing DIY work around the house, there has been no product more popular at Bunnings and your independent hardware stores than Timbermate, I assure you of that. So make sure you continue to pick up their products for whatever work you have to do, from a crack in the deck to your floor or even your walls. You will find the right filling application from the Timbermate Group. They are an Australian-owned business as well. Their range is made in Australia, so you are supporting Australian workers, and we all know how important that is right now. Their CEO as well, Warren, is a big Liverpool fan, so he was happy to get on board with this guest, a man who is Liverpool's second longest serving player of all time, a local lad who came through the academy and went on to become one of the finest defenders to have ever worn the famous Liverpool shirt. He won 2 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, a UEFA Cup, and of course the Champions League, among many other honours. And he also represented his country on 38 occasions, which we'll talk about too. He is Jamie Carragher, and I'm delighted to say he is with me now. Jamie, hello to you.
Hello, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. People are very excited about this. We've got some awesome listener questions that we'll get to at the end. And I'm also looking forward to getting your best 11, because you've got a pretty good podcast, The Greatest Game Played, whereby you get your guests to name their best five-a-side teams. I implore people to listen to it. The Michael Owen episode is fantastic. So your best 11 is coming up as well, which people will no doubt enjoy hearing.
Yeah, can't wait. Well, I've picked it a few times, to be honest. I'm always trying to keep certain people happy. I've changed it a few times as well, because I normally get a little bit of stick off some of the ex-players who I haven't put in or whatnot. So I'll see which one I can come up with today. This
is going to be a lot about Liverpool, of course, but there are a number of other angles that I'm sure every football fan, even those who despise the Reds, of which there are many, will enjoy listening to as well. So it won't be completely Liverpool-centric. And as we stand, Jamie, I'm sure this interview will be listened to for years to come. But as it stands right now, the 1st of June 2020, the Premier League is 16 days away from returning. It's been such a trying period for everyone. It's not guaranteed yet, but extremely likely that it resumes. What have you made of, firstly, the way that the league has handled the coronavirus period, and also the way that fans have dealt with it? Because there's been so many discussions, so many permutations, and let's be honest, a fair bit of vitriol from the Null and Void Brigade and several others during this period. How do you sum it up?
I think the Premier League have done really well, because I think the position they're in is it's so difficult. They've got 20 clubs who they've got to keep happy. They've got broadcast partners all over the world who they're obviously trying to keep happy. There's huge numbers financially at stake for lots of different reasons, and trying to get a consensus in what's going on right now, when there isn't a consensus right throughout the league. Everyone wants different things. Everyone's looking after themselves, which I can totally get and understand, really. You talk about people wanting the league null and void. There's been a lot of discussion about how the bottom 6 have been at this time. And for some of it, I can understand. It's a huge financial hole for them if they were to go down. So I can understand some of the self-interest, some of it I can't. But in terms of the Premier League, I think other leagues have folded across Europe. I think the big leagues have tried to stay going because there's so much money involved, really. And we're probably the biggest in terms of financial aspect of it. But it would have been easy to follow the leagues and close down the league. But I think they knew that was never really an option because the finances at stake. And I think they've held the nerve to get everyone on board now, even the players now coming round as well. I think the Premier League have done a brilliant job. But there's no doubt it's been fascinating watching this play out in the media and being part of this media, and almost the media in some ways being used to push certain people's interests and change the narrative, and whether a certain journalist supports a certain team or I get accused, okay, you're just thinking of Liverpool to win the league. I mean, my initial thoughts on it were that this league should finish whenever it's safe, this league should finish. I then changed my stance on that because it wasn't possible to just carry this season on forever and wait, because obviously it then affects the next season. We've got the Euros put back a year. So there was a cut-off date at some point. But I was always adamant that I felt that a league 75% played out should finish off the 25%. And if it never, it was rewarding failure, not success. And the teams that we're going to miss out were the teams who've had great seasons up until now, whether that's down the leagues in terms of going up. You think of Leeds and West Brom, teams at the bottom of the Premier League maybe not going down, and they've had really poor seasons. So that was my initial thought. But there did have to be a cut-off point, and I think obviously we found it. And I think the Premier League, and they've now got virtually everyone on board. I don't think there's too much dissent from players at all now across the board. I think the testing went out last week, and I don't think there was anyone tested positive on the third round of testing as well. So I think it's probably been really, really tough, and we can only imagine for the Premier League. But it finally looks like it's we're going to get it across the line.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, but how relieved are you that it's all resuming from a fairness point of view? I mean, of course, Liverpool is the big story. I mean, people have probably lost sight of how big of a story it is in sport because of the coronavirus scandal. But one of the biggest clubs in the world who haven't won the league for 30 years will now, as it stands, get that chance. But Leeds getting the chance to win promotion, and Leicester winning the right to play in the Champions League, which is an enormous angle too. How relieved are you that all of that is almost certain to transpire in a fair way?
Yeah, I am relieved, because at one stage I was worried that the league wouldn't go ahead. At different times through this, I've been really confident that the league would get played out, because people ask me, like, they must think I know because I work for Sky, but a lot of the time I'm just watching Sky Sports News myself, reading the papers, and you've got the same thoughts as everyone else. You don't get too much more information. I mean, a lot of journalists get a lot of information from certain clubs, so what they're putting in their papers was what was happening. But people always felt that I had the answers, and obviously where I am in Liverpool, everyone's desperate to see Liverpool win the league. It was there was a lot of nervousness across the city with that, and I couldn't really give anyone the answers that they wanted at times. And sometimes I'd be confident, other times I thought, no, this is not going to happen. And it almost felt like when it made progress, there was always another obstacle put in front of the league starting. And I think that was a big worry from a Liverpool point of view. But yeah, I think it's for everybody. Obviously, people keep talking about the integrity of the game, and that come out a lot at the start of the season finishing. And I think right across the board, people want the games finished. Really, I mean, obviously, there's certain clubs who know that it'd be very difficult to relegate them if the season wasn't finished. But even now, there's talk of points per game, and I think there's still talk about that now and legal challenges for that. But in terms of actually getting it finished, yes, I mean, that has to be the way, really, because it's the knock-on effect of next season. And what you say about teams going down or Liverpool winning the league, I mean, even for Europe next season, who goes into Europe if you don't finish the league? So it had to be finished.
You've done so much talking on it. You're probably sick of it, and thankfully we're not too far away from the actual football returning. But the punditry that you do with Gary Neville, I think is just a brilliant television sport combination. If there's a better one in the world, I'd love to see it. You give it to each other plenty as well, on TV and on social media. That relationship, how much of it is all pure banter, and how much of it is genuine niggle? Because there is that Liverpool-Man United rivalry, of course, that will never go away.
No, it won't. We're both very similar, really. We're both very passionate people, both very opinionated, and we don't like to back down in an argument or a debate, really. So that always makes for good TV. I mean, to be honest, I think there's great respect there, really. I think he's brilliant at what he does on the TV, and when we get together, it's great. And I just think we both like to be challenged, because I think that brings out the best in both of us. And other pundits, it doesn't matter whether it's on Sky or other places we've worked with, don't like to be challenged, which is okay, that's fine, everyone has their own style. But I think if someone challenges us, our reaction is not to think they've shown a lack of respect or something. It's more to go, well, I'm going to come back with you with something type of thing. And if one of us does something silly or says something daft in a show, and it can come back months later on social media, we're not slow to put it on social media and put it out there. I mean, he said, I think, at the start of the season, he thought Man United had won the league before Liverpool. I mean, that was as soon as Liverpool beat Man United at Anfield, I think the league was virtually done then for Liverpool. And that was the first thing I'm thinking to put out there about him, really. So that's the way it is. That's the way the both of us are, trying to just wind each other up on there. And obviously it gets a bit of interaction going with the supporters and stuff like that, really. But no, I just think it works because we're very similar, really. And both very passionate about our job, about our clubs in the past as well. And they are the two biggest clubs in our country, and they always will be, even though Liverpool have gone 30 years without a title. Liverpool and Man United are still the two biggest draws. Everyone in media knows that. Sky know that because of viewing figures. You can, whether you're trying to sell something online or a newspaper article, you put something about Liverpool or Man United, it'll just go boom everywhere around the world. And that's the impact the two clubs have.
And you're both brilliant at your job. When I was living there covering the Premier League, I watched Gary Neville come in and I absorbed every single football show. I mean, I would have anyway, but I had to for my job. And I saw the impact he had on analysis and punditry. He completely changed the way in which the job was done. Within a month, you just went, wow. I mean, here's a man who is showing me, someone who's watched football his whole life, things that I didn't know unless I've played at that standard. He completely changed the game, and they say Alan Hansen did it before him in the early 90s, and Andy Gray as a pundit on special comments. And you could see all the other pundits in English football go, all right, this is the standard now. I need to lift with it. So when you came in a few seasons later, Jamie, how much pressure did you feel to live up to that standard that Gary Neville had set?
I didn't think of it like that, to be honest, really about pressure. I must be honest, when I was playing, I used to watch punditry and analysis and think it wasn't great detail. It wasn't the detail that we were getting at clubs, and that's what Gary did before me. He's come in and basically provided it's basically, the way I look at it is what we'd be getting in a team meeting on a Monday morning after a weekend's game. That's what we're trying to put on a Monday night football, really. So it wasn't a case of that, because I thought I could add a lot to punditry or Gary or whatever it may be, really. And the detail he likes to go into the detail. That's what makes us love football. It's all about detail for us. And, trying to find something someone else hasn't seen or spotted. And Gary's honest enough now to say to me that when he first joined Sky, he found it a lot easier because the other shows weren't he said he could come in on a Monday morning. He could do about 4 shows just on the weekend stuff because no one else had done anything, in terms of maybe other, match of the day or maybe other different shows. He said it's a lot harder now because, as you said, I think a lot of people now have upped the game, going into more detail. I think social media, even fans of certain teams, they'll spot things and put it all over social media. So it isn't easy when you come in on a Monday morning now to get 2 or 3 real good pieces that's going to really surprise people. It's getting harder and harder, and that's something he's sort of mentioned himself when he first started the job. So there's no doubt, I think he'd come in and give it a level of detail that hadn't been there before. He's done it brilliantly. And
you've matched him. You've risen to that standard, and it's been great to watch. Are you set on this as a career for now? Is there anything else you'd like to do, be it coaching or other things in football, or is this what you're focused on and nothing else is in the mind right now?
Yeah, I think I've been in punditry too long now to probably go into a career in coaching, because I'd be starting from, zero in terms of coaching. I've gained so much experience now in punditry that I'd be daft to sort of almost throw that away, really. Would I love to have been a coach or a manager and had success? Of course I would have been, but the path I took was down the analysis road, and this is where it's took me, and I think I'm pretty decent at the job I do. Who knows if I'd be a good coach or a manager? I'm not quite sure. But I just think of people my age now, and you look at someone like Stevie or Frank Lampard. I mean, the experience they've got in the job as well. On the training pitch every day. And I've never put a training session on. I've never taken a training session. So, I mean, that wouldn't be my area of expertise now. As I said, I'd be starting from zero, whereas I've got a lot of experience now with the media. I mean, a job at Liverpool at some stage maybe would be hard to turn down. But I think it'd be hard to move away from Sky because I love the job. I do get a buzz going to games up and down the country and what's in store. And I've always had that as a kid, that buzz for football. I don't think I'll ever leave me. I think that helps me in the job that I'm in.
We had so many great listener questions come through, but one person did ask, and I haven't got their name with me, the Thierry Henry hand on the thigh. Does that moment stand out more than any other when sadly Brendan Rodgers was told he was relieved of his duties as Liverpool manager?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise too much of it. It wasn't until we come off and the producer downstairs was laughing. He's obviously in the reaction on social media, and I'm still obviously doing the show. And I couldn't even remember it was that big a thing and putting as his hand on my thigh, and it's the look into the camera, isn't it? But I didn't realise the camera was on me. I was looking, as in, I knew the producer and director is like, wow, that's a big story. Brendan Rodgers has gone, because we did not know anything about that. We were just told then straight on air. And I thought, the camera's somewhere else. I'm looking at them and pulling a face as if like, wow, I cannot believe that. Because he put his hand on the thigh and the camera was on me. I mean, the amount of memes that I've been sent with that. I love the EastEnders music. Something happens, something gets said, and he puts me on, and the EastEnders music comes in, the big drums. But it's brilliant. I get sent that every week by someone on social media.
It's a cracker. You mentioned Steven Gerrard before. What a weekend it's been. It's the 1-year anniversary of Liverpool winning the Champions League for the 6th time, but it was also Steven Gerrard's 40th birthday on the weekend. What did you do to celebrate your great friend's 40th? And what do you give the man, Jamie, who has it all in life?
Well, all I did was I sent him a post on Instagram. He wasn't getting anything off me. He's... I'm sure he's got enough at the moment, but no, I'm not sure how Stevie celebrated, to be honest. I celebrated it for him yesterday. I had a couple of drinks in my back garden, as you can probably see. But the listeners won't be able to see, but as you can probably see from my mince pies, I had a few little drinks yesterday. But I think with this son being out in lockdown, I'm sure he would have had a few little drinks. He's got a big enough garden. I've been there before. So, yeah, a big one for him. The big 4-0, and just shows you how much he's done in his life. He's still plenty more to go. Obviously, in coaching and management, what a career he's had, as I said, on and off the pitch. How
do you reflect on your friendship, but also your relationship together? Because I would say it's very unlikely that a big club in certainly English football, will have 2 local boys come all the way through the academy and play their whole career together and win the Champions League and do things like that and finish at that same club. The way football is nowadays, if that happens again at a big club, I'd be shocked. Do you ever reflect on that and the path that the two of you went on together and how unique it is?
Yeah, I do look at that and think how difficult it is to be a one-club man. You look at Trent now, his situation, and I mean, at some stage, Liverpool will not be doing what they're doing in terms of winning a European Cup, challenging and winning the league. There will be a barren spell at some time in Trent's time at Liverpool. That's football. And then the decision for Trent would be, well, do I stick at it, or do I go to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona if they want me? Because I think that lad's actually that good. He could play at that level in a few years' time. But, for those clubs who normally go around and pick the best players in the world. And so it won't be easy, to play your whole career. There'd be a different manager. Would Trent move position? So there's a lot of obstacles in your way, being a local lad, really, at your own club. And it's very difficult to leave. I think Stevie found that at times when we weren't doing well, and he had options of, obviously, it's well documented, Chelsea, but he had Real Madrid every summer. He could have gone there as well. And, I always say, when people say about how loyal I am, I don't class myself as loyal because I never had those opportunities. I'd like to have believed that I would have stayed. In fact, I'm pretty much certain I would have. But they were there for Stevie. They won't be there for Trent in the future. And that would test your loyalty as a local player. It's very difficult to leave Liverpool, being a local lad, that you're expected almost to stay. Really, and that's why I retired when I did. I almost wanted to make sure I didn't embarrass myself or the club towards the end of my career because of the club I was playing for. It was another club I'd probably carried on playing, but that's what it does to you. You have an emotional tie to it. And it is very, very difficult to move away, but it will be very difficult in the future for Liverpool or any other big club to have 2 lads. I mean, Man United had it in terms of, Giggs, Scholes and Gary Neville as well. But as I said, it's going to happen less and less. It's so difficult now for local players to come through at big clubs as well. It's probably nigh on impossible. You spent your whole career at Liverpool from the academy, as I said, but you were a massive Everton fan as a kid, nailed on in the terraces from probably as young as you can remember with your dad. When did you change to being a Reds fan? Is it, all right, I'm in the academy, I've signed the forms, that's it, I'm Liverpool now? Or does it take a few years before you actually move your allegiances? No, it took a lot longer than that. I was still an Everton fan right throughout my schooling days. And then I went to Liverpool full-time when I left school at 16. So you're going in there every day. And then you start to sort of sway and slowly move across. But it wasn't a case of one day you wake up and it's, I've signed pro for Liverpool. I'm a Liverpool fan the next day. I was a very passionate Everton supporter. Like, I'm a passionate Liverpool one now and Liverpool player like I was. So nothing like that was going to change very quickly. really. And even in derby games, even though I was at Liverpool, I still wanted Everton to win. They very rarely did, to be honest, but I was still desperate for Everton to win those games. It meant so much to me. It's so big part of my childhood. And yeah, so I'd probably say when I was sort of youth team reserve level, I'd say it was a gradual decline because I had to stop going the game for obvious reasons. I was a YTS or youth player at Liverpool, so that was a lot more difficult. And then from there, it just slowly moved on. You start playing in derby games against, obviously, Everton, for Liverpool reserves, and the youth team, there's always that bit of needle in those games as well. So that sort of stokes a little bit of fire in you that, you're putting that red shirt on against them. Because even when I was a young kid, we didn't play too many games for Liverpool. A lot of it was just training, to be honest. And then I went to the national school at 14, so I didn't play for Liverpool really as a schoolboy too much. It wasn't until I joined full time, and that's probably when my allegiance started to change.
Yeah, they haven't had too much success over the Reds, but Tim Cahill did lead them to a few crucial victories, which will our own Timmy, which we'll touch on a little bit later on. But when you were going through that period, the academy, the youth team, when did you actually stop and think, all right, I can make it here? I can make it firstly as a pro footballer, but also as a Liverpool first team regular, because you played all over the park, right back, centre back, left back, centre mid, and I think you started your career up front as an attacking player. So when did it settle for you and you actually realised, all right, I'm actually good enough to make this team and stay in it?
I don't think I ever felt that when I was in the Liverpool team, that's it, I'm here for good. I always had that fear that someone would take my place or the club makes sign someone that's one of the biggest clubs in the world looking for players all over. I think as a youngster, I always felt I'd make it. And not in a cocky way. I mean, you'd always get asked, or a coach would say, you've got to think of things after your career, and only one or two people in this dressing room will go on and play for the first team and you're speaking to the youth team. But I think everyone in that room always believes that they'll be the one, really. So I don't think I was any different. I always felt that I always felt I'd play for the first team. I didn't think I'd have the career I had and play there my whole life, but I always felt I'd make my debut for Liverpool when I was in the youth team reserves. I thought, I was obviously one of the better players in that team, and it's normally the best player in every year group. No, more often than not in the past, maybe not so much now, but you'd always get a chance at the first team. Really, I always felt so. I always felt that chance would come. I thought it'd come a bit later than it did when I made my debut at 18, but I always felt I'd get that chance. And then when you get that chance, you say to every young player now, you've got to take that chance. And I'm fortunate enough, my debut went well. I got a goal, and then you give the manager and the coaching staff confidence to put you back in again. Your
dad always had belief in you, didn't he, that you would make it? He was always firm in his belief, from what I've read, that there was no doubt you would make the grade.
Yeah, I mean, he always felt I would, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a conversation we ever really had, but I always remember him saying something in a pub to someone, and someone asked how good I was, and I don't think he knew I could hear him, but he said he'll play in the first division, which was the Premier League then. He didn't say who for, but no, he felt I would do okay. I mean, he wasn't someone who bragged about me or was always telling me how great I was, but I think he had a firm belief that I was probably a little bit different than other kids I was playing alongside, where I come from, and then I had a bit of talent for the football, and I'd get there. And listen, he was proven right.
You made your debut in a League Cup game under Roy Evans. Can you remember the conversation when you were told you were making your debut and your emotions then, and anything that stands out from your first Liverpool game that still hits home now?
Well, I was actually disappointed I wasn't starting. That's the first thing. It was a League Cup game, and the manager put Rob Jones in because he'd been out for about 6 months, and he put Jason McAteer into central midfield. So I knew Rob Jones possibly wasn't going to finish the game, so I thought there was a great chance of me coming on. But I was actually looking at it and thinking, I'd been with the first team all season, training every day, and Rob Jones just went straight back in, really. So I was actually chomping at the bit, to actually start the game, and I actually come on and done okay. I nearly scored with a left foot shot. I think Robbie Fowler got in the way of it, or someone did, and we lost the game 2-1. And then I made me league debut, I think a few days later, against West Ham again. I didn't start that game. I come on a half time at Anfield against West Ham. We drew 0-0. I played centre midfield with John Barnes, really. So it is a bit surreal. Yeah, exactly. Because I remember being in the Gladys Street, that's Everton's home end, and John Barnes bending a right-footed curler into the far corner in the 4-4 game. And I always think watching that game as a kid, I would have been about 12 or 13, ended up making my debut, certainly at Anfield in the league, alongside him in centre midfield.
An unbelievable combination. A player who was there alongside you for that journey, Jamie, in the youth team, and obviously went on to steal the headlines straight away, is Michael Owen. I find the way that he's perceived in English football to be really interesting because, I mean, he was within 2 years of debuting as good as any striker in the world, killing it at World Cups, wins a Ballon d'Or. And the way he's looked at now because of the injuries he suffered, and then, of course, from Liverpool fans because of the move to United, can be slightly skewed and, in my opinion, maybe underappreciated at times. How do you reflect on that? And also, how good was Michael Owen through that period of youth football and, again, at his peak, which some people don't always remember?
No, I agree. You talk about how good Michael was. I mean, I think Michael, from what I can remember, was the only guarantee he would be a star as a young player. A lot of us, there's always still questions, how will someone adapt to the Premier League? And, you know, and even Stevie Gerrard, there's no guarantee he'd go on and become what he come. But with Michael, when you saw him at 16, you knew he was going to be a star. That's the best way to describe it. And I think Steve Iway's been asked that question before, and he said the only guarantee was Michael Owen. He said, I knew at 15 or 16 he was going to be a top player. And there was no doubt. I remember some of the goals he used to score. I remember him scoring. The best goal I ever scored was in the World Youth Cup under 20s in Malaysia. But it was probably better than the goal he scores against Argentina. He beat more men. But I mean, the pace of him was. There's players who were quick, but then there's people who were just on another level. And Michael's, it was like turbocharge when he was a youngster. You just couldn't keep up with him. He'd just leave you for dead. And it was sad the way he's almost remembered, really, because it's probably completely opposite to me in that I started my career slowly and got better with age and maturity, whereas Michael's best years were probably from 18 to 22, really. And it's probably better to have the trajectory of a career or anything really like mine, where I'm finishing playing for Liverpool, getting a standing ovation coming off the pitch, and Michael, I think, was come on sub for Stoke. And you think that's not right. How's it happened like that? But that's football, the decisions that you make where you end up as a player. And I think it is sad, really, that he's almost not loved by any set of fans in any club, really. Even though he's played for 4 or 5 clubs now, because he's left in difficult circumstances at each time, really. I think that's sad because I think Liverpool's still, it is his club. I know that, really. It always will be his and his family's club. But it is sad, really, that he's not loved. But listen, I can also understand from a supporter's point of view because of the move to Manchester United. I know at times he got a little bit of stick when he came back with Newcastle before he'd gone to United, but that would have subsided over time. That had just moved on. That was just an initial reaction the year after Istanbul. That would have gone away and he'd have been fine. I think it was obviously the move to Manchester United, and that Michael knew at the time that was probably going to cause a problem. But Michael's career at that time was going downward, and he didn't have great offers. And then out of nowhere, Alex Ferguson, one of the most successful managers ever, one of the biggest clubs in the world, Man United, come for it. I can imagine that gave Michael a huge lift and an ego boost that he probably needed at that time. And it's a decision that, in some ways, I can say I can understand it. In other ways, I think should he have been thinking about the future a lot more, about what the effect that was going to have on how he was seen, really. But I just think he was just that frustrated with his own career at that stage. He's made a decision to give himself that lift and give himself that buzz again. So in some ways, I can understand where he was coming from, but again, that's why the supporters will always have that over him, because they're Liverpool's biggest rival.
The two of you really broke through and made names for yourselves under Gerard Houllier. He left as soon as Benitez came in, and obviously you had the peak of your career when Rafa was there. Houllier and Benitez, they seem like such different characters. Houllier very warm, Benitez so detailed and maybe a bit cold, standoffish from the outside. How do they compare as managers, and which strengths did you really like from either of them, and which weaknesses did you wish you could negate from either of them?
Yeah, they were different managers and different personalities, really. Gerard Houllier was someone who watched training, didn't really take a training session, because that just was not his skill. That was not his area of expertise, really. Gerard Houllier was a great manager in terms of managing a group of people, bringing this group with him on this journey and set this vision where he wants this team to go, really. I think Rafa was more of a man who was on the training pitch, coaching. I think he knew a lot more about football from a tactical point of view than Gerard Houllier. I'd say Gerard Houlier's probably man management skills were probably better than Rafa's. But it's like you're never going to get the perfect player, you don't get the perfect manager, really. And I think in some ways, if you mould the two of them together, you would have the absolute perfect manager in some ways. But no, they were different personalities. Gerard Houllier wanted to know a lot about people's families and was aware of when it was your birthday and all these like sort of things. Almost, it almost felt like Gerard Houllier was area of expertise was more off the pitch, in that he was very big on how you looked after yourself, what you ate, what you drank, that type of thing. Whereas Rafa was not someone who'd get you in and say, right, I don't want anyone to have a drink, or I don't want that. I think he obviously expected players to monitor themselves and look after themselves and stuff like that. And at that stage, players were doing that. It was probably a little bit different to Gerard Houllier when he first came in, because there was maybe still that drinking culture there at clubs and maybe in the Premier League. But no, I think Rafa was all about everything football. Every time you spoke to him, it was about football, whereas Gerard was a bit more, as I'd say, off the pitch. But as I've always said, the two biggest influences, 12 years of my 17-year career at Liverpool was those two managers. So that's a big reason why. And there's only one other trophy I won with a different manager, which was Kenny, towards the end of my career. So all my trophies and big nights and games I remember, and journeys and nights out after wins, and that come through those managers.
Sadly, and neither of them delivered Liverpool a league title. That's going to change shortly, which is wonderful for the Reds. But it seemed as if all through the late 90s and up until a few years ago, whenever Liverpool got close to winning the title, they would almost find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. And I guess both Houllier and Benitez were involved in that at times. I want to ask you quickly about some of those situations, but the first one is after you win the treble and everyone thinks Liverpool are set now, they're going to go and they're going to lift this league title, that they're ready for it, and then Houllier decides to reject the chance to sign Nicola Anelka and instead brings in El Hadj Diouf and Salif Diao, who are meant to be the next Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira, supposedly. And I know you've had run-ins with El Hadj Diouf, both you and Steven Gerrard. You've traded barbs over the years. At which point did you realise, hang on, Diouf is not going to be the player that everyone hopes? When did it hit home that this wasn't going to materialise in that way?
Well, I think it was quite early, to be honest. I mean, and that's not just about them. I think more often than not with players who come into Liverpool, foreign players maybe especially, and people talk about taking time to settle. I mean, there's very few players, I think, at Liverpool who have had great Liverpool careers who haven't settled quickly. I think Didi Hamann was maybe one who definitely showed his best form over the next 2 or 3 years rather than his first year. But if I think of Sami Hyypiä, Stefan Henshaw, Marcus Babbel, this is just at that era, John Arne Riise, even the players now, you think of Virgil van Dijk coming straight in, Alisson coming straight in and doing well, Mane, Salah, Firmino, all these players, all these great foreign players for Liverpool, they all start well. Now, when I say start well, I'm not talking about the first game, but it certainly doesn't take them 4 or 5 months to sort of almost show what they're about. And so I think if someone doesn't do well, it's like a perfect example probably is Naby Keita now, who I don't think has shown us fully what he's about. But he's been here 2 years now. So I'm a bit like, I'm not really expecting too much more different. I hope I'm proving wrong, because there's no doubt. I think we all as a supporter group got really excited when he came in. We'd heard a lot about him. It hasn't quite happened for him. Now, I'm not really fully expecting it to happen now to the level that we thought we were going to get this midfielder who was going to be the best player in midfield, getting forward, getting goals. And with Diouf and Salah, they're just being good enough for Liverpool. And people say, I mean, you mentioned we exchanged barbs. A lot of it is more reacting to Diouf, really, because I don't even know where he is now, if he's still playing or he's maybe a manager or something somewhere, and maybe something comes up. I think he said something about Steve. He wasn't in the... I think he said something like Pele put him in the top 100 players of the world ever or something, and never put Stevie in it. And you're thinking, Jesus Christ. I mean, he does actually believe that, really. But I mean, Diouf did actually, I think, better than Salif in that Salif was just a big, strong, powerful midfield player who didn't have much technical ability to play at that level. Whereas Diouf had a little spell where he played in front of me on the right wing, and we beat Man United in a cup final in 2003, and he actually did okay for probably 3 or 4 months in that position. But he was bought as a centre forward. He was bought to score goals, and he didn't do that. And as I said, I don't think it takes too long to work out with a signing whether you think you've got the real deal. Because sometimes you knew straight away with Luis Suarez. You can see it in training. You're training with them every day, and your work plays out very quickly. And as I said, very few, if any, ever really sort of make me change my mind, certainly when I was a player.
The next period, of course, is under Benitez, when, again, everything's tracking in the same direction and you think Liverpool are going to win the title. And then, bemusingly to everyone, he decides he wants to sell the player who was basically his conductor and his right-hand man almost in midfield in Xabi Alonso, after they have a fallout, who was such a brilliant player for Liverpool for so long. And, of course, there's the American owners and there's the facts speech and all of this. But as players, when that's going on, especially the decision to sell Alonso, what are you thinking in that dressing room? What's your reaction? How do you handle that?
Well, we didn't handle it very well, did we? Because, I mean, as soon as he went, it felt like everything fell apart, and we weren't as reliant on Xavi as I think people think. Because what Xavi did, I think, was there for 4 or 5 years, and what Xavi had was, he had a brilliant first season, which meant the supporters loved him and they knew they had a great player. And his next best season was his last season, and in between, he had some injury problems. Mascherano would come in, Sissoko would come in at times. Xavi didn't play even in some of the big games. I think there was a semi-final of the Champions League, and Xavi was on the bench, I think, in 2007. So, of course, he was in Liverpool's best team. But what I'm saying is he wasn't as pivotal as a team because of how well he played in that last season, really. I mean, the season before, the manager wanted to move him on when he wasn't maybe at his best and wanted to bring Gareth Barry in. And to be honest, I always think a manager should be allowed to do whatever he wants in terms of who he brings in and who he brings. It's his decision. So I have no problem with Rafa wanting to sell Xavi because that's his decision, really. And at that time, it wasn't going as well for Xavi. Could we bring Gareth Barry in? Could we do different things? But for whatever reason, Xavi didn't want to go, or he didn't want to go to the team the club wanted to move him on to. So he then stays and he then has his best season. My problem with Rafa is not selling Xabi Alonso. Is almost not making up in that season when everything was going well. We were playing well. We looked like we were going to win the league. We looked like we were going well in the Champions League. Xavi's playing really well. It's a bit like, well, get him to sign a contract now, or even not apologise, because I mean, you don't have to apologise if you want to sell a player, because that's part of football, but almost reconcile, really, because obviously there was a little bit of needle there about, was Rafa trying to push him out and Xavi didn't want to go and he only wanted to go to a certain club or whatever it may have been. But basically, shake hands, get together. We're having a great season. And if that standoff between the two has made Xavi play his best football in Liverpool shirt, well, the big winner's the manager, because his team's winning every week and Xabi Alonso's playing out of his skin. And that's my biggest sort of disappointment of it, that the two of them or the manager couldn't get together through that season and say, all right, I wanted to sell you because of this and that, but you're playing up your skin now, you're brilliant. I'm not going to sell you now, obviously I'm not. We want to go forward and make this team even better. So that was my big disappointment looking back, that they couldn't get together and sort it out. And it was almost inevitable at the end that Xavi was going to leave that summer, when I think we'd done so much together as a team and built with Rafa year after year, adding 2 or 3 players here and there to make the team better. And we were so close. And then I just don't think selling him at that stage, I don't think we realised, or probably even the manager didn't, how bad it was going to go next season. Now, listen, maybe it wouldn't have gone that well even with Xavi there. I don't think Xavi leaving all of a sudden that we completely fell away. Maybe the year before we played to our absolute maximum and actually couldn't get any better to take that next level to go on past Manchester United. And we possibly needed to bring in maybe 2 or 3 players rather than lose one of our main players. So it was a massive handicap for us next season. Of course, we should have done a lot better even without Xavi. But I just wish, the player and manager could have sorted it out, really. And I look at that more than questioning Rafa why he wanted to sell or buy someone, because that's managers living by them, die by those decisions.
And then the last moment, of course, is you'd retired after this, but the Chelsea game and the Gerrard slip and the loss of the title opportunity in that season. I remember you saying shortly after that you felt there should have been more onus on the goalkeeper, Simon Mignolet, to do more in that situation. Is that the way you still reflect on it?
Listen, Stevie made the mistake, but a goalkeeper's job is to get you out of trouble. Because if you do everything perfectly defensively, your goalkeeper shouldn't have anything to do. But we know there'll be times in a game, whenever a goalkeeper makes a save, he's getting someone out of jail, if you like. Now, that's not a mistake from Mignolet. But I think Demba Ba running through, that, I think if you ask any striker, the hardest thing when running through on goal is actually being dead centre. You almost want some sort of an angle, opens the goal up on one side, or a goalkeeper will cover one side and leave an angle open. You'd always want something, you can bend it round them or you can fire across them. When you're actually going straight at a goalkeeper, it's not easy. And he had defenders on top of him. And I just felt, was it a mistake? No, but you just like, I could imagine being in Stevie's position and thinking, come on, get me out of jail. Come on, please, please. And I don't think it was a great finish. I don't think it was an easy chance. People think going through on goal's easy. It's not. And especially being dead centre, you think, come on. But listen, I'm not blaming Simon Mignolet for that. Obviously, Stevie slipped. We know what happened. Ball went under his foot and he slipped. Really, but I think it's the type of thing Alisson would get you out of trouble for now. I think if you made a mistake or I'd done something at the back and someone was going through, you'd be confident that he'd pull you out the shirt.
That's the aspect of the chat that Liverpool fans won't enjoy. Rival fans might revel in that. But the high point, of course, Istanbul 2005, Jamie. War and Peace has been written about this game. And, of course, the halftime talk has been gone over so many different times. But what was the key for you in that break from 3-0 down that changed the complexion? Was it a part of the speech? Was it a tactical change? Was it something another player said? What was it that went, okay, you know what? We're not actually dead and buried and we've still got a pulse here? I
think the big thing that happened at half-time is the manager making changes tactically. The manager, Rafa Benitez, is not someone... He's not a motivator as such with his words. Rafa's a thinker and he'll try and affect the game tactically, and that's what he does at half-time. He brings Didi Man on and he goes to 3 at the back, and we can control the 2 strikers a lot more. We control their midfield player, especially Kaka, a lot more with Didi there. And Stevie then could play in that attacking role where he was always at his best, really, in some ways. Now, that's Rafa Benitez put his imprint on that second half. And that's, I think, the biggest change. It's not just all about heart and character, because it's a Champions League final. They're giving it everything as well. AC Milan, they give one of the best performances you'll ever see in a Champions League final if you take away those 6 minutes. I mean, the performance was out of this world. Really, I know we were 3-0 down in the first half. How we never conceded another 3 in the second half and extra time, I don't know. Through maybe sheer guts and hanging on and a little bit of luck here and there, really. But they were outstanding, really. But I think the tactical change meant we could get closer to certain people, and we could certainly get our better players in the attacking front 3. Because I think the attacking front 4 in the first half, I don't think we played as badly as people think in the first half. We actually had quite a bit of possession, but every time it went up to our front players, it was just coming straight back, and then they counter-attack and cause us big problems. Or Stevie gave us that one player then at the top end of the pitch who was at the same level as the Milan defenders. Defensively, he was offensive-wise, and I think that's one of the big reasons we get back into the game. He scores that header, he gets the penalty as well. So I think we had someone of real quality in that final third for possibly the whole of the second half, and then he switches to full back. But yeah, definitely the changes from the manager.
And we know that Harry Kewell started that game, which was a big surprise. We'll talk about Harry in a moment, but this question came through from Mike Scholes, which is a really good one, straight to the point. How big was the bender afterwards? And as we say in Australia, who was best on ground, off the ground?
Well, that was... The finals now are Saturday nights, aren't they? So this one was before that, and it was a Wednesday night, and I was still going on Sunday. About 6 or 7. I'd had sleep. Don't get me wrong, I hadn't been on all-nighters, but about 6 or 7 o'clock Sunday night I had to finish. Then I was feeling it too much, but no, it was brilliant. We were up all night, only a few hours sleep, as you'd imagine, in the hotel, and you're hungover coming back. And then you have the homecoming. And then we went out that night in Liverpool. So that was Thursday. Friday night was a mate's 30th who was an Evertonian, so I wasn't missing that. Saturday was my agent's wedding, so we had to go up to Scotland for that, so that was another big drink. And then I had to have a drink with all the people who'd been to Istanbul and hadn't got back for the homecoming. They wanted to have a big drink on the Sunday and like a barbecue in someone's garden. And I just remember I just had enough, and we've probably all been there, whether you're out with your friends or you're in a nightclub and you think, I've got to go home now, and you don't tell anyone, you just sneak out, and that's what I did. I just said I was going to the toilet and just walked straight out the front door and just carried on walking home. I'd had enough. I was basically up to here with alcohol. Really, it was just seeping out my pores. But it was a time in your life you just love to go back to for reasons on the pitch and also off the pitch, as we've just mentioned.
Yeah, I trust you're enjoying Jamie Carragher. He is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure you'll agree. And there is plenty more quality coming up. Don't worry about that. I just want to thank our sponsors quickly. ISC Sport, the winner of the best question, is coming up, and that prize is going to be given away to a lucky listener. And also our sponsor for this episode. They are a quality company, Timbermate. You've been in isolation, plenty of you. Some of you have done some DIY work around the house. There has been no product more popular at Bunnings and your independent hardware stores than Timbermate. So make sure you pick a product of theirs up for whatever work you have to do, from a crack in the deck to your floor or even your walls. You will find the right filling application from the Timbermate Group. Crucially, they are an Australian-owned business as well. Their range is made in Australia, so you are supporting Australian workers. We all know during this tough time in the country how important that is right now. So we thank Timbermate for their support. Get your hands on some Timbermate products at all your hardware stores because they are first class, just like Jamie Carragher is. Let's listen to more of what he has to say. It sounds like you'll be hard to beat for best on ground, off the ground, but is there anyone else that stood out as someone who really revelled in the moment and took advantage from that team?
It will have been Didier Mam. I think me and him were notorious when we wanted to celebrate. We make sure those two are not together because we just loved the banter, having a laugh and the socialising together, really. But yeah, he was heavy. And there was a picture I put on for Stevie's 40th on my Instagram. I'm not sure it's still there, where Stevie's in the middle, or I'm in the middle, just comatose. Didier Mam's talking to me, and Stevie's the other side. So I think that was probably not a great threesome to be on a night out. Really, we could put it away. Really, but Didi would have been heavily involved. We had a great night all over the world with Didi. He's put some ale away in Liverpool, Didi.
I've seen him here in Australia. He spends a lot of time here now, and I've been out with him once or twice. And yes, he knows how to enjoy himself, but always in the right spirit, or more often than not anyway. Harry Kewell, I don't know how he parties, and if you've got some insight as to how he went about things in the aftermath of Istanbul, please share them with us. But what did you make of Harry's time at Liverpool? Because I remember when he joined the Reds, I mean, he was coming off just a brilliant period at Leeds. When he signed, it was a special television episode here in Australia. I mean, it's not like now where you've got Twitter and it's all released. He actually announced it, I remember, on Channel 9 here in Australia in prime time. That's how big of a story it was, our golden boy going to Liverpool, although we didn't know until he'd announced it. But how do you reflect on Harry's time at the Reds and how it all worked out for him, considering the injuries he suffered as well?
Yeah, it probably isn't. It didn't probably pan out the way he would have wanted it to. I don't imagine. I mean, when he came to the club, we were having a difficult time with it was almost coming to the end of Gerard Houlier's time, and I think Harry Kewell was almost like the last throw of the dice in some ways to get that era back up and running, because we'd almost just fell away the season before. And we thought the sign of Harry could, get us back on top. But, I mean, we all initially thought we were buying like a left winger. And when he come to the club, I think it come out a few weeks that, he really wanted to play on the right for whatever reason. So I think that was a big part of him coming to the club, that Gerard Houllier said he could play on the right. For whatever reason, I don't know what the thinking was there as such. But I think within a few weeks, he was back on the left, really. Now, he didn't come into a great team, to be honest, at that time. The Houllier team was... was just coming to its end, really. Rafa Benitez was over the moon that he had Harry Kewell in his squad. I remember the first time I spoke to him, because he'd seen him for Leeds, I think, at a Champions League game, and was a huge admirer of him, as we all were. But it just hadn't quite happened for Harry, for whatever reason. I don't know whether the injuries had just taken half a yard of pace away from him as well. But I still always wanted him in the team because you knew he still had that class. He was good in the air. He was strong. He could hold the ball. He knew what to do. But it was probably evident quite early on. He was not going to be for Liverpool what he was for Leeds, which was the star man and the go-to man as such, really. And it was sad, really, because he did have real ability. He's remembered, obviously, for playing in finals and coming off injured. I mean, no one's going to play a final and come off injured. He obviously had operations after them and snapped his groin, I think, in Istanbul. But he got criticised for that, which I think was very harsh and very unfair by Liverpool supporters, to be honest. But that's because I think he had a lot of injuries at different times. Maybe they hadn't taken to him, so they were never really prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt, really, that he probably deserved in those finals that he played in 05 and 06.
He's a major reason, along with Craig Johnston, who came before him, as to why there are so many Australian fans that support the Reds. I mean, in Australia, it's Liverpool and then a gap, and then probably Man United and Arsenal on an even level in terms of Premier League support here in Australia. But did it ever take you back just how many Australians support Liverpool? You never came in 2013 at the MCG game. That was obviously a massive affair. But you did come a number of years later and play with the current team in Sydney, which was also a sold-out stadium. What do you make of the Aussie fans of the Reds who are just so incredibly passionate? It's
unbelievable, really. It is a huge eye-opener. I don't think people realise how big Liverpool are, really. Certainly fans or maybe players of other clubs until they come to Liverpool. I think it's the same at Manchester United. I think wherever I used to go in the world, a lot of the time it was Asia on pre-season tours and, Thailand and the Far East. And the support for Liverpool is just off the scale. So obviously when I went there with the team to Australia, you're expecting the same. And that's exactly what we got. And I think it is a big eye-opener for players who join the club. They know Liverpool's big, but the reach around the world is just phenomenal, really. And I think a perfect example is a year ago today in... the Champions League in Madrid. I mean, Liverpool basically took over the city there. And I think if you were a Tottenham fan or a Tottenham player, yes, Tottenham are a huge club. But that day just told you the gulf. And it was a huge gulf in terms of what the club meant to the people of this city and how big this club is. I mean, as I said, the Liverpool supporters, there must have been 60, 70, maybe 80,000 supporters in Madrid. And that's what Liverpool do. When they go somewhere, they go en masse, really. And almost half the people there know they're not actually going to get into the ground, but they need to be there because Liverpool are in a Champions League final. I don't think other clubs actually think like that. And just the support around the world, it is phenomenal, really. And we, in the last probably 20, 30 years, we haven't had that real period of sustained success, really. And I think we could be on the verge of this now with Klopp. So it's really exciting to think of like the trips we could go on, things you could celebrate in the next 3 or 4 years, and to really, really embrace it, really. Because maybe how successful Liverpool were in the 70s and 80s was maybe taken for granted at that stage. I certainly don't think that'll happen anytime soon because, as I said, we've always had bits of success when I was playing, but it hasn't carried on for 4 or 5 years. Really, I think this team is going to do that. And the sheer size of Liverpool, even considering we've gone 30 years without a title.
Yeah.
I mean, people probably just cannot believe the scenes that they saw, as I said, a year ago today in Madrid. But that's the effect of this football club. It is special.
Well, they didn't have sustained success until now in the Premier League era. There have been some superstar players who have drawn more supporters to the club. I mean, Luis Suarez and Fernando Torres are two that come to mind. The best in the world for a period of time while playing at Liverpool as strikers. How do you compare the two of them, Jamie? I mean, Suarez, who had so many flaws yet was a genius, and Torres, who had such peaks and then such a low towards the end. How do you reflect on their times with the club?
I think both were possible. I think they were the best striker in the world when they were at the best at Liverpool. Both those strikers, really. The interesting thing with Torres is because Suarez has then gone on and done even more with Barcelona. The interesting thing with Torres is it never really happened for him anywhere else. And sometimes you think was almost being at Liverpool a bit of the freak in some ways. Was that what was the real Fernando Torres, what you saw for most of his career, or the 2 or 3 years at Liverpool, was playing with Steven Gerrard, taking him to a level that he'd never been at before and he couldn't get back to because he didn't have I wouldn't say a player of that quality because he played with Spain and some great players, but the understanding between him and Stevie was outstanding. I also think of the effect Stevie had on a lot of strikers. You think of his relationship with Michael Owen, Torres, Suarez also, and how many times he used to create for those players, really. And I think a lot of those players even still speak now. Who's the best player you played with? Steven Gerrard. That's who they say. If you named, well, certainly I know Torres thinks that and Michael Owen think that, really. But Torres, when he first came in, a lot of teams had looked at him and didn't think he was good enough. I'm talking about your Chelseas and Man Uniteds when he was at Atletico Madrid. When he first came in pre-season, he looked a little bit raw, really. But it was just his sheer pace and power. He was just made for the Premier League, really. And it was just... We as players were just so happy to have him, really, because you think we have got the best striker anywhere now, right now. He then scores the winner in the European Championships for Spain and after the end of his first season for Liverpool, really. But, I mean, I'd have to say Louis probably just pips him because Louis had unbelievable ability. It wasn't just goals with Louis, it was the actual ability and things he'd do with a ball. And honestly, it was just training with him every day. He was some player because Torres in training wasn't great because training is normally small-sided games or everything's basically condensed in terms of space, whereas Torres came alive on big open spaces. But no, I think what Louis done in his career is phenomenal. He took a decent Liverpool team to almost the title single-handedly in some ways. He took Uruguay to a semi-final of a World Cup. He then, Barcelona, I think, has had a little bit of a slight dip, if you like. He then goes there and they go back to winning the Champions League and the treble, I think, in his first season. I think they've won the league virtually every season he's been there. And he's been the best striker in the world, I think, for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
He's a freak, but he has got those flaws. And there was the biting incident at Liverpool and, of course, the racism incident as well with Patrice Evra. As players, could you talk to him in that way and try console him or talk him around certain issues? How did you deal with Luis Suarez when those controversies came to a head?
I didn't really speak to him about any of those. He was obviously, there's little groups in clubs who were more closer to someone else. So if that was Stevie, obviously I'd had a good chat with him and spoke about different things. He was obviously Spanish speaking, so a lot of the South American lads in the squad, the Spanish side of it in the squad as well, they were all quite close and pally. I think there's no doubt that people in South America or maybe in Spain see racism differently than what we do in our country and don't think of it as maybe serious as we think of it and as it is in this country. You only have to see what's going on in America right now in the last couple of days, really. But I think it would have really hit home, to Lewis, the coverage, the ban, and I really hope it did, and he learned from it, really. But he was someone who was always trying to get an edge on a football pitch, and he felt he could do that by abusing someone, obviously using racist language. What happened with Ivanovic, he'd actually done that before for Ajax, I think, and then he subsequently did it, I think, a year or two later at the World Cup, I think, it was against Italy, wasn't it? Chiellini as well. And that just, I mean, he wants to win that much. I saw it on screen, and that's not me condoning what he does, but I think he gets himself to a position where he's that wound up on a football pitch. He wants to win that much. He lashes out if he can't. Maybe get the better of a defender, whether it was Chiellini or, Ivanovic in those situations. And that's just the character he is. I mean, I think he done something in the World Cup, didn't he? Where he handballed it on the line, and then he was celebrating, I think, off camera in the tunnel and things like that. He wants to win that much, really. But of course, listen, he crosses the line at times, and rightly he's being criticised heavily for those occasions. But I don't think it'll massively change. You look at the way he was when he played against Liverpool. He didn't think, I'm playing Liverpool, I'm not going to be me. He was trying to get Andy Robertson booked. He was trying to get players involved. He wasn't worried about the reaction from Liverpool supporters. And in some ways, I admired that, really. And, he went out and played because he was just desperate for a win for his club at that time in Barcelona.
You retired the season before Liverpool almost won the league, and Suarez was unstoppable. In that final game against QPR, I was there. You had a 30-yard drive that hit Robert Green's post. A question from Riley Beveridge, who's a big Liverpool fan that I know here. I mean, how would you have celebrated? Had you actually planned a celebration in your mind if you scored in your final game for Liverpool?
No, I mean, when you only score 5 goals in your career, you don't be planning no celebrations. It's, I think, because of the nature of the game, I think it was quite late in the game and it would have put us 2-0 up. I think the best thing would have been just to walk off and make that my last touch for Liverpool. Really, I always think that would have been a brilliant way to go out, you know, scoring on my last game at Anfield, and I scored on my full debut at Anfield as well. Would have been a lovely way to go. Really, to be honest, I only shot because it was my last game. I wouldn't have done that in any other normal circumstances because I just thought, it's my last game, just have a shot. And it's only QPR in some ways. We're winning 1-0, we'll probably be okay. Really, so. But I was just more pleased that the game went well. We won 1-0. We kept a clean sheet, but yeah, it is something that gets mentioned a lot. It would have been a brilliant way, and we, probably remembered a lot more. Really, from my last game going out like that. But listen, a lot of players far better than me in the Liverpool shirt didn't get the send off I got, so I was very lucky. Really, I got a standing ovation from both teams walking out, got a guard of honour, a nice mosaic in the Kop, and a lovely. Round of applause to go off for it, and I've done a little speech at the end of the game, walking around the pitch, and it was a lovely way to go out. Because as I said, there's a lot of Liverpool players who are better than me, who have not been afforded that privilege, really.
Your career with England was so different. I mean, you played 38 times, you went to World Cups. I remember the 2006 World Cup. I mean, you're coming off that Champions League win and then another great season afterwards where you're in the Premier League team of the season. And I remember thinking Carragher should be starting here at centre-back on form for England, as good as Terry and Ferdinand were, and I think Sol Campbell was in that squad as well. You never seemed to have the same sort of presence with England as you did at Liverpool for whatever reason. How do you reflect on your time with England as a result and your career with the Three Lions?
Yeah, that's the one disappointment for me. It's the only team in my life I didn't establish myself in from when I was a kid of 5 years of age. I'd always played for every team and being one of the best players in the team, and that was the only one I couldn't. Now, I don't think I was as good as John Terry or Rio Ferdinand. I think they were slightly better than me. Some people may think a lot better than me, but I do believe that's why I had no problem with them starting. I just felt when they were out the team, I should have been given more of a go at centre-back. Was I passionate enough to play for England to, not playing for England didn't keep me awake at night. It was almost, I'll go away for a couple of weeks, I'll come back, I'm playing at Liverpool, it's not the end of the world. Whereas I think other people, it was a big thing for them to become a regular with England. And I think, should I have had more of that attitude and push myself more with England to not even just accept John Terry or Rio were better than me? Because the way I speak about it now, I feel like when I was there, I probably almost just accepted it, really, rather than, and I'd always fought against that throughout my career. So, maybe I didn't think I could get to their levels. That wasn't possible. I'm not quite sure, but it is something I look back with a little bit of regret that I never done more in England shirt and never actually established myself or got a run of 5 or 6 games. I think I probably was taken for granted also a little bit by England managers. I think they just saw me as the utility man in the squad. He could play left back, right back, centre back, And I think I actually shocked Steve McLaren when I said I didn't want to play anymore. He then said he would start picking me a lot more, which I don't know was the right thing to say, but maybe I should have went and spoke to him and said, if you don't start picking me, I will leave. Maybe I should have done that, because that's what I would have done at club football, or most players would. They tell the manager to leave and if they're not going to get enough game time. And maybe I should have done that 12 months earlier, really, and almost forewarned Steve McLaren. Because it was around that time of the 2006 World Cup, and then Sven left, and I thought maybe I'll get more of a chance now with Steve McLaren, but it never seemed to materialise, really. And I just wish I'd have warned him when he first got the job, rather than telling him I wasn't carrying on, because he almost didn't get the opportunity then, as he said he would have done, to start playing me or whatever. I think they may have thought I was just happy to be in and around the squad, and that was enough for me, which it wasn't.
That era underperforms. For whatever reason, you never seem to galvanise and make the most of your talent. We're seeing a cultural change now, and the wonderful performance, of course, in Russia, and that should lead to more success for England in the future. But, I see the Australian team very closely, and when they get together, it's like the best week of their lives. They just cannot wait from all over the world to get together in camp and play for the Socceroos, and that shows, despite not having as much talent as the English team does, in their performances, where more often than not they overachieve. But England never seemed to. Why did there always seemed to be this pressure on the team that you just couldn't overcome as a unit?
I'm not sure, really. Were we as good as what people say? People say it was a golden generation. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it was. There was some world-class players there, there's no doubt. But England had a great generation if you go back to sort of the mid to late 90s. I've been watching old games. You think of Euro 96, the World Cup in 98. You look at the players there, Adam Shearer, Paul Ince, David Seaman in goal. Really, so there are some really, Teddy Sheringham was another. So that was a great England team, really, as well. You don't forget as well, at that time, Brazil had Rivaldo, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, France, the teams they had, the Spanish team that was just round the corner. So there was a lot of great teams about, really, but there's no doubt we didn't perform. I can't say I actually enjoyed being at those World Cups myself from a personal point of view. I don't think many of us did because they never went particularly well, really. Could the squad have been managed better? I actually think it could have been. Yeah, I think a lot of players would say that, but I wouldn't go as far as to say, it was Sven's fault for not getting the best out of all these players, because I think that's too easy. And I don't like it when players in that generation speak like that, because I actually think the first place you should always look is yourself. If something's not going well in a team or your performances, don't blame the fella you're playing next to. Don't blame the manager. Look at yourself. What could I have done? What could I have done more? And I think a lot of those players have got to look at that and think, well, I didn't bring to the table what I was bringing for my club, really. I don't class myself in that for the only reason because I didn't play. I was actually watching these games, in major tournaments, really, rather than actually participating too much. But obviously the big thing was always Stevie and Frank and how good they were doing for Chelsea and how they couldn't transform that for England. But they were playing different roles for England. And again, that's something you talk about. Could they got more out of them and maybe played them in the type of roles they were playing for their clubs rather than the countries, really. But I mean, England getting to quarterfinals, I think that's par. I don't think it's massively disappointing. I think it's probably par if you actually look at the history of England and what we've done as a nation. But I think in this country, if we get to a semi-final, those group of players are lauded. You think of 1990, what happened a few years ago with Gareth Southgate, the Euro 96 is getting re-shown now. And I just think that team, where a penalty shootout was away from being lauded and getting to a semi-final, and that's what they needed, really, to really get to the last four of a tournament, really, to almost be thought of a lot better. Because the players we're talking about all got over 100 caps. Your John Terrys, your Stevies, your Franks. I mean, there were some players, and there were some England players as well. Don't ever forget that. To play 100 caps for your country is something special. So that shows how well they did in England shirts. They just never got to the level that they were doing club-wise, which was Champions Leagues, and transforming that to international.
You still played 38 times for your country and went to World Cups. It is nothing to sneeze at, so it's something to be proud of, even if, as you say, you didn't quite reach the heights that you would have liked. We've got some listener questions, Jamie, which I want to get through. There's an ISC Sports pack up for grabs for the best question. There's 5 of them that I've picked out from a litany of Twitter questions and also a few on Instagram. So we'll rip through them quickly. This one from Todd Ingram's a good one. Now, there's a chant that the Liverpool fans sing called "We All Dream of a Team of Carraghers." Number 1 is Carragher, number 2 is Carragher, number 3, all the way up to 11, and then all the subs are Carragher as well. He wants to know, if there really was a team of Carraghers, how do you think they would fare? Now, your self-deprecating answer might be to say not too well because they're all defenders, but you played all over the park as a junior, so they might go okay. How would they fare, the team of Carraghers?
Well, I think it'd be a tough team to beat. They'd be very tough, very aggressive. I think there'd be a lot of 0-0s. I think we'd lose the odd game 1-0 through an own goal. And I think we'd nick the odd game 1-0 if I could get me brutal boys' boots back when I was the goal-scoring sensation at under 11, really. But I think it'd be a very tough, hard-working, uncompromising team. I think it'd get the job done, but I don't think it'd be a great watch. No, I think it'd be very methodical. Really very tactical, very aggressive, very defensive at times, and you wouldn't want to play against my team, but I don't think you'd want to watch it.
How would you go giving constructive criticism from the back, I dare say, to yourself, because you did it to a number of players, most notably Alvaro Arbeloa and several others over the years. So how would Jamie Carragher react to Jamie Carragher giving him stick?
Well, he wouldn't back down. Jamie Carragher never backs down when someone gives him a little bit of stick, so he certainly have something to say. So there'll be a constant argument, I'd imagine, on that pitch. really. And you're just going from player to player and bouncing off different people, really. It'd be a nightmare for a referee.
This question from Dundino18 is an excellent one. What advice would you give my 9-year-old twin boys who have aspirations to make football their career? They are talented. A bit of advice from you would be appreciated.
I mean, to be honest, I get that asked a lot. And there's no special advice for anyone or special secret why people get to the top. I think you've got to have a burning desire to get there. I think practice, listening to people, sacrifice, I think is a big word I always use. If you want it that much, you're prepared to sacrifice things, maybe going out with your friends to make sure you go to practice, listening to your dad, to your coaches, not thinking you know more than them, really. So that's all it is. I think sacrifice is a big thing. I think if you ever want to get or you see anyone who's at the top of something, you have to sacrifice things to be where you need to be, whether that's in your job, whether that's your mates are going out on a Friday night and you've got a game on the Saturday. We all love a good night out, but no, I've got my game on the Saturday. So I think sacrifice is a big thing. I'd say that's the biggest thing to take from it.
This one from DD Cosmo 5. I know you're a football aficionado. We've seen that through quarantine and all the 11s that you've been doing with different rules attached. So he wants to know your dream centre-back partner to play alongside of any era in the history of the game.
I mean, my favourite defender is Franco Baresi for that. I think that Milan team was the best team I've ever seen until I think Pep's Barcelona team came on the scene. But I just loved him. I mean, if anyone wants to go on YouTube and watch just Baresi's clips for the 1994 World Cup final when he's playing against Romario and Bebeto in that heat in America, is unbelievable, considering he's had a knee operation a month before and hadn't played for a month. It's just unbelievable watching that. So I'd possibly say Franco Baresi, I think. And for Liverpool, it'll probably be a toss-up between Big Verge and Alan Hansen. I'd say I think me and Alan Hansen would be a decent combination, completely different. So as players, so it might have been a partnership that might have worked that.
I think you and Van Dijk would complement each other beautifully as well. This one from Nick Moody, a simple question but a fantastic one. Which striker did you not like facing? Who got the better of you, be it physically or mentally, more than you would have liked?
Well, physically, Thierry Henry, because he was so quick. I'd always pick that one. I think some of the toughest strikers you come against are sometimes strikers like Kevin Davis, Bobby Zamora, Carlton Cole. People don't recognise them as great players, but in terms of the problems they can give you in a game, because every set piece, every time there's a long throw, it's just, you've got to deal with it. When you play against the top teams, they play like Liverpool do, and there's a lot of passing, there's a lot of stuff into midfield, there's a lot of, playing the ball around the back. So it's more about concentration, really, whereas when you play against the teams near the bottom, it's a constant fight. And that's sometimes games you think, I'm going to have to head the ball 40 or 50 times here today to make sure we get a result. And it is tough. It's certainly not easy.
And this is the winner, Jared Neal. Congratulations. The ISC Sports Pack, a Guernsey, a T-shirt and a cap is coming your way. A really good question, Jamie. He says, we see so many good fly-on-the-wall sports documentaries nowadays. Obviously, The Last Dance is leading the way in that regard. He says, what is one endearing thing you wish Liverpool supporters knew about a former player or a former team that has never seen the light of day that perhaps a documentary might have revealed?
It's a hard one, that. I mean, I'd love to have done a proper documentary on Liverpool, really. I was actually in the midst of doing a documentary on Liverpool winning the league, actually, before what happened with the coronavirus. It wasn't a behind-the-scenes thing. It was my own, what I was doing for Sky. But I mean, a behind-the-scenes thing, we did something when Brendan Rodgers first came in.
Yeah. And
to be honest, it was awful. It was rubbish, really. And I'd rather not have done it than do that. But I think if you're going to do it properly. I used to always love, you know, in Australia about the Lions, when they come over there for the rugby. Yeah. And they always produce a DVD or a documentary of whether they go to New Zealand, Australia or South Africa. And there's some of the best stuff I've ever seen, that on documentary-wise. Really, I'd love something really behind the scenes to really give an insight into what goes on and what happens. And to be honest, I mean, I know people would love to be in the dressing room, but I think probably 30 years ago that'd be a lot more exciting. I think there's a lot more calmer heads in dressing rooms now, because of course, if you see something behind the scenes, you want to see something hard, you want to see Ferguson kick a boot at David Beckham, or they're the type of things you want to get. I'm not quite sure of an incident of something that I can think of off the top of my head to give the guy his answer, really. But I do wish you could have. I mean, the best football documentary for me of all time is the Graham Taylor one with England.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just for sheer hilarity of it's hilarious, really. But that's why people are worried, because Graham Taylor didn't come out of that very well, and that is the big worry with, I think, a documentary in football. I think the worry is we don't need to take the risk of not coming out of this well. And I think Man City did one that I've watched in lockdown, All or Nothing was it called, or so? No, well, the City one basically with Pep.
Yeah.
Now it's really good, and I enjoyed it, but it's still, you can tell they still look good coming out of it. No one looks bad coming out of it, and that's just the way I think sport and documentaries are going to be now.
Yeah, Graham Taylor, can we not knock it? Which is the famous line from that. And then, of course, the Mike Bassett movie, which was basically a spin-off from that. But is there a player, to follow on with the winning question, a player that you think fans would have learned a lot more about had they had a camera on them, and perhaps, the layers, had they been peeled away, would have revealed a different character to the one we see over the 90 minutes?
Just 1 second, Dan. Just time to come in. I've just got to finish this. A player... I don't know. I mean, obviously, you get players on the pitch who are seen of as a certain type. I mean, even sometimes managers, really. I think Gerard Houllier would be an interesting one. If you'd actually seen him in team meetings, I think you'd get a completely different picture from what people actually think he was as a manager. I think people see Gerard Houllier as this nice, almost like a granddad type of figure, or your favourite uncle Frenchman. And he was a really tough, he took no messing, no nonsense. His team meetings were brilliant. He was so aggressive, and I think if that's probably the best one to say. I think Gerard Houllier, if you'd watch the behind the scenes documentary on, say, us winning the treble, and you've seen the way he spoke and what he said in team meetings, he was a real motivator, Gerard Houllier. He really was in team meetings. You wouldn't probably expect that because he was foreign, he was from France, he was an old PE teacher or school teacher. So he was. I used to love listening to him speak. Really, he used to give this team talk at the start of every pre-season, and with the new signings, they'd almost map out the vision for the season, and what our targets were, and it lasted about an hour, this talk, and it was amazing every year. You used to see, I always remember Gary McAllister saying, I've never seen anything like that in my life, and he was 35 at the time. He obviously had a great career and very experienced, really. So probably Gerard Houllier, if you could have had a documentary on the treble season.
That's a good answer. To finish off then, Jamie, your best 11. You do it with your guests on your excellent podcast, The Greatest Game Played, and I implore people to go there and have a listen, because there's some really good interviews. But 1 to 11, the best team from the players you have played football with. Right.
I would go, goalkeeper-wise, I would go for Pepe Reina. Am I doing this Liverpool, or is it England as well? Or
England, of course. It could be anyone. It can be someone from Bootle who you thought had more talent than anyone who you played with in Liverpool. But yeah, any team you've played for.
Well, I'll go with Pepe, because I probably played with him more than any other goalkeeper, and he was really good. He was a modern day keeper in terms of with his feet as well. I will go centre back. I mean, let's start at right back. I have played with Gary Neville. I'll put Gary Neville in. Let's put Gary in, even though I played with him in England and he was a Manchester United man. But, I think he's renowned as maybe the best right back we've seen in the Premier League. I think that will change in a few years. I think Trent will get that slot as the best ever right back in the Premier League. But I'll go with Gary Neville. I will go with Sami Hyypiä, who was my best centre-back partner. I think was one of the greatest centre-backs who ever played for Liverpool. Great purchase by the club as well for $2.5 million, absolute steal, considering how well he played in the service we got. Next to, I'll go with John Terry. I think the best centre-back to play in the Premier League. Again, I think I'll be changing that when Virgil van Dijk finishes his time at Liverpool, because I think Virgil will take that title for me. I think he's going to go down for me, or certainly in my eyes, the best defender to play in the Premier League. But I've always said John Terry to that question before. So I will go with John Terry and Sami Hyypiä. Left back. Left back was probably a position where I'm just trying to think. I don't think at Liverpool I ever played with a great left back. I mean, like a real world-class left. Well, seeing what Liverpool have got now in Andy Robertson. So I'd have to go with Ashley Cole, who I played with England. So I'd have to go for him, because I think him and Gary would make most 11s in terms of, the Premier League era, really. In midfield, I would go with Xabi Alonso to sit in there and pass the ball. I mean, you think of what he did for, obviously, Liverpool, then what he does with Real Madrid, what he's done Bayern Munich and Spain, the success they've had. So he'd have to play in there. I'd have to go with an enforcer in there alongside him. And it's whether it's Haman or Mascherano. I'm going to go with Didi Haman. Maybe just his passing ability ahead of Mascherano, who probably had a little bit more energy than him.
He's your good mate as well, Didi, of course.
Yeah, he's a good mate as well, and he can be drinking partner. So those two. Then I'm going to go with, ahead of them, I'm going to put Stevie Gerrard. Yep. An attacking midfield player. So those two are sitting. Stevie's behind where he played. He played behind Torres brilliantly for 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to put Stevie there. And now, right.
Now you can play 3 up front.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to have to. I'm going to put, because of the system I'm playing, I need someone right through the middle. I'm going to pick Torres and Suarez. It's just who I pick in that alongside that front three. So I think I could put Suarez to the left. Because I think he has played there at different times, even under Brendan Rodgers, tucked in on the left, a little bit where Mane plays now. And who else do I go with? I think Fernando Torres was the best striker in the world, really, for a number of years when I played with him. I played with Michael and Robbie, and I played with Michael at his best, probably not Robbie at his best. You know what? I'm going to go with Michael because of the cup final.
Yep.
In 2001 on the treble season, he got Ballon d'Or winner there. Torres was amazing, but never quite won a trophy. And then probably on the right wing, again, I never played with great wingers as such at Liverpool or England, really. I played with David Beckham, he was a great player, but he was more of a midfield player than a wide player.
So you've got 11 now. If you've got Suarez, Owen, Torres, so Suarez, Owen, Torres up front with Gerrard behind them.
I thought I'd picked Michael up front and not put Torres in.
Okay, right. Okay, so you're going with the winger instead of Torres, all right?
You know what? I'm going to go with Steve McManaman because he was brilliant for Liverpool. What he's done with Real Madrid, also winning European Cups, gets another Scouser in the team, and that was his position almost, floating around that right wing for Liverpool. It was probably the best. He wasn't really a winger, but he was probably certainly the team I came into. He was top notch in that position. So
Jamie Carragher's best 11: Rayner in goal, Neville, Hippier, Terry, and Ashley Cole at left back, Alonso and Haman in midfield, Gerrard in front of them, McManaman on the right, Suarez off the left, and Michael Owen through the middle. It is some team because you have had some career, Jamie Carragher, and it's been truly wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. I know people have loved it. Australian fans, as you know, are passionate, and to hear from you directly means a lot to them. So we are hugely appreciative.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. Hope it goes well.
Thank you, mate. All the best with it.
Thank you.